Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking all about everything that was announced during the financial results. We'll be talking about WandaVision, safety, Godmothered. We're going to be talking about the right stuff, giving our thoughts on the latest episode of The Mandalorian, and a lot more. But before we get into any of that, just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, make sure you do go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. You can also subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're literally just a couple hundred away from 50,000 subscribers. A huge thank you to everyone over there. You can also subscribe on the audio platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, etc. And a big shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon and YouTube, where you can support us from as little as $2 a month. And for everyone in the gold tier and above, just a big thank you to What's on Netflix, Lauren, The Juice, Darren, Andrew. A huge shout out to Sarah as well for all of her support. And also, we've also got Joshua on YouTube as well. And again, just thank you to all of our silver members as well for all of your support. It does all make a massive difference in making sure the podcast and the channel continue. So let's jump into it. Big news in some ways with the financial results. That always tends to bring a few big announcements. And the big one really has to be WandaVision, January the 15th. It skipped back in a couple. To be honest, it only really pushed back about 3 weeks from when I thought it was going to drop anyway. But yeah, so what did you think of the release date?
Yeah, same thing as you. I'm a little bit sad that we're not getting it this year. I was holding out hope it would drop maybe the week after Mandalorian finished up or something like that. But honestly, it works out pretty well. I don't think a lot of people were going to have the opportunity to watch it over, a family holiday, although it is a good time to watch something with family that's a little trippy looking. Maybe not something I'd want to watch with my parents, but it's not that far back. January, what was it, 15th? Somewhere in that range is perfectly reasonable. Not 2020, but close enough for my happiness.
Yeah, it's funny because so many people have been like, it kind of was building throughout the week because Disney were releasing images and they were saying stuff about it, and everyone was going, just give us a date. And I'm going, they're going to release a date just before the investors call because they're going to need that big boost. They always like to do a big drop just before the investors call to show that they're in business and they got big news. So WandaVision, like I said, I was expecting December the 18th. That was when WandaVision, that's when the last episode of The Mandalorian was dropping. That would have led us in for the next few weeks. But with Soul coming on Christmas Day, it kind of made sense to slip back. And then it would have been like New Year's Day. So it makes, I don't know, to me, it just like, a few weeks really didn't make a lot of difference. We already knew that it was coming in December from way earlier this year. It's been on the cards for December. I know there was kind of the source code was saying Thanksgiving, but generally that was something I never really was expecting because of The Mandalorian. So I was like, yeah, cool. That's great. I know there's been a lot of excitement about Marvel and some disappointment from a lot of people that the first year of Disney didn't have it, but that's down to Falcon and the Winter Soldier not finished filming. I think that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people have quite grasped the whole thing of what the closing down actually when it was going to hit us. I think everyone was sort of, the shutdown from March onwards was going to affect TV in the summer. Well, it's really going to be this coming winter where the TV is really affected because WandaVision did finish filming in sort of end of March or beginning of March. Mandalorian season 2 finished in February. So both of those shows would have been coming out around now anyway. It's the stuff that's coming after this for the next 6 months. I mean, obviously Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think they just had that last bit of film and they've done it. It's all done. So that's great. But yeah, I think it's going to be like basically January through to Easter is when we're really going to have a struggle. But there's going to be some things I think they might fill it in with.
I think there's just a general misunderstanding of how television in particular is made, even if it's for streaming. It takes a long time, especially with special effects heavy shows like The Mandalorian, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, presumably WandaVision will be as well. It's not an instantaneous process. They don't finish filming and it's on TV the next day. These aren't soap operas or whatever, and even those take a little while before they air.
Well, I know, like, for example, like when the lockdown happened here, like, things like EastEnders and stuff like that, they took months before they kind of eventually ran out because they were like months in advance. And like, I started watching your documentary last night and, they were filming it was filmed back in November before the whole situation happened. And with that thing of, we're seeing stuff so far in advance. It was kind of funny. I was watching another documentary the other day and we were actually in the high street in the nearest city to me, and we saw it being filmed. Because he was, and we were going, oh my word, that was like 10, 9, 11 months ago when we saw him filming it, and it's not like YouTube where I film it and it's up in an hour. And it's like, this is the thing with, television. It does take a while, but to me, WandaVision, January, this is fantastic. We've got Mandalorian right through till Christmas.
We have a dog.
Yeah, she's a dog, and she decided to climb in behind the unit. So I'm just going to have to just stop her a second. Yeah, no, she I think WandaVision for then is a great time because we're going to get Mandalorian going right through, and then we're going to end up with Soul for Christmas and a few more bits and pieces. So I think that's a good lineup.
It is a solid lineup. I think it bridges the gap between Mandalorian ending and WandaVision starting up nicely. It gives us a week off at the beginning of the year as well, so we can start off 2021 in a happier place than all of 2020 at this point.
Yeah, well, it's kind of one of those things of just because the date changes because we made up a clock doesn't actually mean that anything changes.
Let us dream, Roger. Let us dream. This is a Disney podcast.
Yes. Remember 2020, that was everyone's year. Right, so moving on from there, there is actually going to be a packed couple of months, actually a month before Christmas, because Disney announced 2 new movies are going to be dropping in December. On December the 4th, we're going to be getting Godmothered, which stars Gillian Bell and also Isla Fisher. And this one, she's a young fairy godmother who's trying to kind of show that there's still magic in the world and all the rest of it. And we've also got Safety, which they actually released a trailer for. That will be coming on the 11th of December. And that one's an American football thing about a guy who ends up having to look after his brother. And yeah, so if you're into sports movies, that one's obviously going to be a thing for you. But I was kind of surprised with both of them dropping around then. I thought, 2 movies back to back, and then we got Soul. Yeah, it's pretty good. I suspect we shall see the Godmother trailer either over the weekend or next week, because we also had the Black Beauty trailer as well drop this week. Mm-hmm. We had the Mickey Mouse shorts trailer drop this week. We had the Inside Pixar. We've had. I don't know what was going on in America, but it's almost like the PR team didn't put anything out for like 2 weeks, and then suddenly this week had to announce everything. I don't know what it was, but we won't go near that. But it definitely was like, how many announcements? It's like one day going, they put out like 6 announcements today. I was just like, they've been stacking them up.
They have been, and it was kind of nice to have a bunch of content, even if it was short form trailer content to go through. And I have to say, some of the stuff looks pretty interesting. Actually, all of it looks pretty interesting now that we look at it. The Mickey Mouse shorts, obviously, that's really just a continuation of the Mickey Mouse that's already been running. Black Beauty, we're not the target audience for that, but still looks like it's going to be pretty quality. I think people are going to enjoy that. It's got a good cast. I still don't know why the horse has a voice, especially since they didn't feature the voice in the trailer at all, but we'll have to wait and see what they're doing for that. And as you said, Safety is looking like it's going to be a pretty good sports movie, although, American football is not my thing. Obviously, it's not your thing. I think there's a decent hook in there, though, with the older brother having to take care of the younger brother and turning his own life upside down, but doing it willingly. It's obviously an act of love between them, and he doesn't feel burdened by it or anything like that. So despite the fact that the sport itself isn't really either of our things, I think we can both look forward to at least seeing how the brother story plays into it.
Yeah, for me as well. American football movies. The only one I think I've ever enjoyed was The Waterboy.
Technically, it counts.
Yes, for me, obviously, I'm not a huge NFL or football fan. But I do like these kind of movies sometimes. They got the feel good one. I will obviously give it a go. Going in some ways as well, it kind of helps me because my expectations are so low. I go, I enjoyed that. That was fine. I'm sure there's a lot of it. There was quite a bit of excitement about it. The name I still think is very bad. I
get why they call it Safety. There's a couple of, it's a little bit of wordplay going on there. He's saving the brother, and presumably he's playing the safety in
Yeah.
football. I'm not actually sure which position he plays, but I have to agree in terms of naming, they probably should have gone with something a little more, or sorry, a little less generic.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as it's just not a very interesting, and also it doesn't say what it is, you know, especially if you aren't familiar with it, or it's a little bit along the lines of, you know, some of the comments and stuff was like, you know what, you know, they thought it was a
Yeah.
safety announcement or something like that, and it was like, yeah, this, I don't know, that's my only issue. The trailer looks fine. Like I said, I'm happy to watch it. I think for me, between like Black Beauty, Safety, and Godmother's the one I'd be like, oh, that's like a holiday movie that's kind of, you know, a bit of magic, got a, you know, a bit of some comedy in it. That's the kind of the one I'm kind of out of the three, I'd be like, yeah, that's it. This Black Beauty looks pretty good. It was funny because my wife, we were going for it and she goes, put the trailer on, because I said, well, and then sort of says, well, you're going to be watching this one anyway. So like, okay, cool. And so we watched the trailer. Said, oh yeah, I'll watch that one. So that's what I like. Sometimes it's that thing of, you know, especially with the movies, it's like, no, we can watch them together and stuff. So Black Beauty is definitely one I thought looks good. I thought that one looked fine, exactly what I was expecting. You know, she's lost her parents. She connects with the horse gets taken away, and then she's got to find the horse. You know, you know, the what do they call it? The McGubbin? What's the
MacGuffin?
Yeah, MacGuffin. Yeah, you know, where you've always got to, there's always something that you've got to go off and chase.
Right. Yeah. The MacGuffin, or we use the term more often as like the super powered item that will solve all the problems kind of deal. You know, for Avengers, it would be like the Infinity Gauntlet, or the power reactor, or, you know, the thing that if we have it, it solves our problems. Or alternatively, it's the thing that causes all the problems, like the bomb on the bus and Speed would be the MacGuffin for that movie.
And you still don't want to be on a bus more than 55 miles an hour. But
no,
yeah,
absolutely not. Especially if Sandra Bullock's on it. Yeah. Yeah, stay away from Sandra Bullock.
Yes. So from there, they were some good announcements and lots of nice stuff. This, to be honest, between now and Christmas, I think we've got a really nice jam-packed, you know, we got 4 movies. I mean, 4 movies in the case of 6-7 weeks. We've got the holiday special coming up. We've got Marvel 616. We've got more Mandalorian. We've got the right stuff. So yeah, I think we've got a nice. I think there's a lot of expectations this week with it being the first anniversary that we were going to get a lot of announcements or some surprise drops and stuff. The surprise drops really were the Home Alone movies dropping onto the US Disney Plus. But speaking, because they had the investors call as well on the same day, they announced that they have got 73.7 million subscribers now, with a quarter of them now coming from India through Disney Plus Hotstar. Great news, but that date was only like the October the 3rd or something. They normally give us like an update like as of a few days ago, but I think they're holding on to that for the Investors Day so they can kind of go, here's the bigger number, because we've got Latin America launching next week. So that's going to be a huge spike in new signups, also the holiday season and all the rest of it. So yeah, the actual investors call, other than that, we had it confirmed that they're going to be looking into, well, they're not so much looking into, but they're going to be going into more depth about Premier Access. That's something that isn't going away. They're going to be keeping that. Not a huge surprise. I think I've been saying this for ages. I think with cinemas going forward and stuff, it just makes sense for them to do it this way of just trying to get as much money as they can, because next year's still going to be bumpy. I know we've all got like the vaccine and stuff, but this is going to take a year to get all this sorted. So I think 2021, I think they're kind of loading it up for that. And so I generally think as a whole, the trouble with the investors call it very much was along the lines of we were having a bit of a laugh on Twitter about the fact that if you had a drinking game and you had a drink or a sip every single time that they mentioned, we'll tell you more on the Investors Day on December the 10th, you'd be drunk completely. You'd be plastered, because they must have mentioned it so many times. Every time they asked the question, is, I will tell you on the Investors Day. Well, yeah, we'll talk about more on Disney Plus on Investors Day and Hulu and Star. They really, I think they were deflecting it. They were using the streaming stuff as a push forward to kind of get over the fact that the parks had been decimated because obviously the situation in the studios. But they still kind of managed to make a profit, so that was definitely a good thing.
I can't hold that against them, and them wanting to hold stuff back for Investors Day makes sense, because they will probably be able to give us more details about a lot more things by December 10th. Like, they could probably give us generalizations now, but they can give specifics. then. So
Yeah, I think we are. I personally think we are. I think we're going to see a massive reshuffle or a massive shake-up of Disney Plus and Hulu and slash Star. I think we are. I think the words that are coming out, and now this is going to lead on to the topic, because this week Peter Rice, who runs the General Entertainment Division, which is basically the television division, they've been changing the internal structure of Disney so much over the past few weeks. So they made a big kind of note, and there's been some big changes. And how all their content comes out now. Basically, all the different studios and stuff are making stuff, and Disney Plus has now been integrated with Hulu, and they're all under one big sort of banner now of General Entertainment, with all the content being created for Disney Plus now basically under the Disney branded, which was the Disney Channel. They've merged everything around a bit, reorganized with him, essentially taken, I think, a lot of the decision making about TV shows away from Disney Plus and put it more onto the content creators are creating the content, and then they choose where they want to send it. Everything's more streamlined. Basically, anything under Disney is now under the Disney branded division, which was the Disney Channel, which essentially I would say along the line, if it's got the Disney logo slapped on it, it's going to come under them. That's kind of the way. I think that's the most simplistic way of looking at it, which I think it makes more sense. We're going to see a much more, they're fully focused on streaming, and they're calling it, like linear. They're basically this whole thing, like we've been talking about for years, of this, like, well, that's television and that's streaming, and you're not coming anywhere near me, and that looks like that is all being pushed aside, and it's like, nope, this is the streaming is the new top thing. And yeah, lots of reshuffling. For example, now is it Courtney Monroe, who runs National Geographic? She is now going to have more control over giving content to Disney Plus that way as well. And I think just as a whole, we are going to see a lot more content dropping onto Disney Plus in the future.
I mean, it's pretty much their only option at this point. I know the Disney Channel will still exist for quite some time, but honestly, the Disney Channel just doesn't generate buzz. And Disney Plus does. When you put something and say, oh, it's coming to Disney Plus, people will pay attention to it a bit more than Disney Channel. It's just the fact now.
It's also not even that, but I mean, it's like, for example, me here in the UK, we don't have the Disney Channel anymore. Well, it doesn't exist. It doesn't even exist anymore. So therefore, it's like, it doesn't work.
I mean, that's exactly why. We in the States, though, even here, the Disney Channel does exist. We have Disney XD and a couple other channels as well. But we've talked about they'll probably be compressing those at some point. And even so, I don't think I've really heard any news about what's coming out on those channels, except every once in a while, you'll post an article and be like, the holiday special is coming out on Disney Channel. And you're like, well, okay, that's cool. I'll just wait for it to pop onto Disney Plus instead. And some people will come back and say, oh, well, you're just saying that because you're on the Disney Plus podcast here. But it's like, no, literally, I don't think I have turned to the Disney Channel at all on my TV since Owl House premiered. And now that's on Disney Plus. And I only watched like 2 episodes on Disney Channel. It's like, I am enjoying it, but I'm going to wait for it to be on Disney Plus at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to pick up a bet for the Investors Day, I'm going to be guessing either day and date or Fridays for new episodes and new movie. I think we're going to lose all of that kind of 6-month thing, because it's just they need the content fast. There's no point having the Owl House sitting around for 9 to 10 months elsewhere. So bring it to Disney Plus straight away. Each episode it bumps out Disney Plus, makes it look better. So I that's one of my major predictions, but we're going to go into that a bit more later in another episode nearer the time. But I think all of this lining up, and they're getting rid of all the boundaries are breaking down. That's, you'd contact Disney Channel and they'd be like, oh yeah, well, that's a Disney Plus division. We don't talk about them. Or is now, I mean, there's even a new Disney Plus advertising agency. They've split the PR divisions up, and basically Disney Channel and Disney Plus are like that now. I mean, they're all the content they're creating is all coming under it. It's going to be a lot of changes in the next year, I think, with Disney Plus. COVID has completely just speeded this process up, and they've got the success on their hands. They've got 100+ million people now subscribe to Hulu and Disney Plus. You know, that's it. I mean, the things are just moving so quickly.
And it's not going to be a Disney specific thing either. We're going to see this with all the major streaming companies, especially those that are owned by channels or content producers themselves. They're going to be skipping television, or they're going to be going, all right, it's on TV and tomorrow it's on, you know, our localized thing. And there's really not much that can be done about it at this point. It's the state of the world. It would have happened anyway at some point, but we're looking at it now from the point of view COVID has accelerated this massively. And I kind of, on the one hand, I wish that wasn't the case, because, you know, the whole situation's pretty terrible. But on the other hand, you know, it makes it easier for us to have everything on streaming and not have to have commercials.
So there's also been some good news this week, because Darkwing Duck is set to return in a rebooted series for Disney Plus. Again, this is something we're going to see a lot more of. I think stuff just starting to roll over to Disney Plus. I think it makes total sense, because Darkwing Duck was actually in the new DuckTales series just a couple of weeks ago. Makes complete and utter sense. You know, they're rebooting everything else. Why not Darkwing Duck? One of my personal favorites from the 90s. It's kind of that time though. The only thing I remember with Darkwing Duck was about the same time that, like, we had Batman, Superman, X-Men, you know, Spider-Man. So it was that kind of, I remember just being like, oh, it's good. It's just, I was maybe at that age where it was just starting to change over.
It was definitely a golden age of animation at that point. There were so many good shows on, and Darkwing Duck was definitely among them. But I can see why, if you're going up against the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini Batman series, or the X-Men animated series, or the Spider-Man series that was going at the same time, why it might get shuffled off to the side. But honestly, ever since they announced the DuckTales reboot, not even showing it, just announced it was like, are we going to get Darkwing Duck? I want Darkwing Duck to come alongside this. I also want Rescue Rangers. I know that they had something in production, but we haven't heard about it in a while.
Well, I think they are in the new DuckTales series as well. They're going to be in there as well. So
I've only seen season 1 of DuckTales so far, and Darkwing Duck made a cameo in that season, but I don't think the Rescue Rangers did. So I need to get caught up with that. But either way, super happy for more Darkwing Duck. Give us some Rescue Rangers on top of that, and I will feel like a 90s kid all over again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing, really. There's lots of good stuff coming down the line. But yeah, there's also, it's just, that was literally one that broke literally last night after I messaged with all the information. But moving on from there, I just want to have a quick look through the trending tab before we get into our show reviews for the week. So here, trending, let's move right to the end. So we have got in the last spot, Zootopia, Cars 2. Sorry, Cars, not Cars 2. No, why would anyone want to watch Cars 2? Home Alone 2, which is a new entry. Bluey, Tangled, Coco, Avengers, Toy Story, Phineas and Ferb, Incredibles 2, Clouds. Nice to see that one still in there. The Right Stuff. People are still watching that one, which is good. Onward, Once Upon a Snowman, Toy Story 4, Once Upon a Time, Jessie, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Frozen, Frozen 2, Moana. New entry into the top 4 was Home Alone, and I think that will probably be around for a while because that's a good one. And then Clubhouse, Simpsons, Mandalorian. So it's really just Home Alone kind of jumping in and being the main thing this week. Not a huge surprise. There was not really an expectation, I think, of Inside Pixar going anywhere near it. But obviously, it's just nice to have all of that content dropping in onto Disney Plus. Now, speaking of Inside Pixar, you watched an episode of that. What did you think of it?
I did. I watched the first episode, which was about the writer or the co-writer of it, and overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the writing side of things, so I liked hearing his process and what he added to it, and his take on the character. What
is that the one about Soul?
Yes, Soul.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it should have specified it. This is Inside Pixar, not Inside Soul. So the co-writer for Soul. And he was talking about the additions that he brought to the main character and his perspective on it. It's always interesting to see how these evolve. So where it was at when he came in and where it is at now. I I find the process fascinating. So I really enjoyed this episode overall.
I still find this whole thing with those movies of just how fluid they are. I mean, I always thought, when they said, "Oh, they take like 4 years to make," it's like, okay, well, they, they can be a nice, finely craft thing that's really tight. It's like they're still changing things so close to it. It's almost like, they're just, I don't know. It's really been a real opener with all of this, especially that Frozen one. I just realizing, it's like, okay, I thought there was a much tighter process. Then it seems so fluid at the end.
Yeah, especially when they were talking in Frozen 2 about like, we don't even really know what the story is. We've got the trailer out, not really sure. And they're like, oh, well, maybe this is just the Pixar thing. And then we watched that Howard Ashman documentary, and they're like, yeah, Beauty and the Beast, it's out in like 8 months. And Howard Ashman came in, and we decided to change the entire movie around the songs that he wrote. And like, wait, what? So,
It's straight. I think this is that thing of they spend a lot of time developing all the characters. But like once they've kind of got all that done, they can kind of just do what they want because they can because it's easier. But yeah, it's definitely a fun little series. I've seen 2 episodes. I'm glad they only put 5 out. Because otherwise it would have kind of become the I think the next One Day at Disney short. I thought they were okay. I wasn't blown away. I was like, okay, this is nice fluffy stuff. Went into a little bit of detail. I think the 10 minutes helped kind of give them a little bit more scope, but generally, again, it in one way, this would have been one episode if they put them all together.
I was actually expecting it to be one episode, to be honest. I was expecting to sit down and watch a straight 45-minute or 50-minute documentary, and instead we had 5 little mini documentaries, all much more tightly focused, but it feels a little more disjointed this way. I would have preferred a fluid, overarching narrative that kind of showed Pixar rather than little pieces of Pixar.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally as a whole, I don't think they did a great job in kind of promoting this series. I mean, they didn't even put the trailer out till like 2 days before it. I don't know. It's kind of sometimes with these things of like, maybe the trouble is with this behind the scenes stuff, because apparently there's like one-on-one of it. It only appeals to a certain audience, and also a lot of people they kind of look down on it. It's like, well, this is all just cheap. And it's like, well, it is cheaper TV for them to make, but it does kind of make sense for them to do. Well, they do seem to love doing their behind the scenes stuff.
I mean, I think they're just in the habit of doing behind the scenes stuff, because you look at their history of DVD and Blu-ray releases, and they're almost always packed with things. So I think it's their habit to wander around with cameras being like, hey, let's talk to this guy over here. Maybe we'll use it in the documentary. Maybe it'll be in the behind the scenes. This is our audio mixer. This is our writer. This is the people jumping down the hallway on little cardboard sheets to make it look like they're the toy army guys in Toy Story, whatever. I used to love watching those things on the original Toy Story and Bug's Life and so forth. And it's honestly fun to see them continuing doing it. And this makes sense as a way to continue doing it, with DVD sales and such kind of dropping a bit in favor of them moving to streaming.
Well, I think as well, and not only that, even it's just like you say, they do the extras and they've always been popular. They've always been something they've done. But releasing them as extras within Disney Plus doesn't really make a lot of sense, when it's like you just put them all together into a bit of a better thing, and you suddenly got yourself a show, and I think people are always going to be interested. I think we're always going to have a lot of this. I think people just need to accept that Disney like creating stuff about how they create it, because they've been doing this for, as you said, 20, 30 years of film. You watch that Howard documentary, how much footage they had of them making a movie from back in the 80s. They've been doing this for a long time, and they know it works. And it's just a way of using that technology, that. And I expect as well, in some ways, it's generally a much cheaper show to create, because they've already got everyone paid up, signed up, doing it. And it's just good. But yeah, it's okay. It's not one of the best ones. But moving on from there,
definitely not one of the best ones, but you're not really expecting it to be. It's a good, 15-minute slot. I don't have enough time to watch a full show, but I wanted to watch something. And honestly, it's not something that Disney was really looking at to drive people to Disney Plus. It's just a bonus for being on it in the first place. Much like DVDs back in the day, you never bought the DVD to hear the commentary track. You didn't buy it to see the behind the scenes documentary. They were just nice things to have on top of getting the movie.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You've got to look at it. They're extras. They're not normal stuff. And that's kind of the way to move on. So let's now talk about, let's do The Right Stuff, because we've got the penultimate episode of The Right Stuff. I think things definitely started picking up a little bit in this episode, because we kind of essentially caught up with a clip from the very first episode and brought it all in. And yeah, quite a fun episode. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode mostly at this point. He said things were speeding up, and I was kind of like, oh, they made a lot of forward motion, but they didn't actually, do the important things yet. But it was good to see, the movement. It was good to see them, getting the last minute jitters and the behind the scenes of how do we make this decision? Do we feel like we can do this? Can we launch a guy into space? Because we're kind of behind the curve now at this point, and they just got to do it. And then there's also the let's call it the backroom politics between the wives, Shepard and Glenn kind of having it out a little bit there too, and Scott Carpenter thrown in. I could talk about all those for hours, but what was your impression of them?
I'm going to be honest. See, the thing is for me is it has changed a little bit because I've now seen the Real Right Stuff. It's a 2-hour documentary that you'll all get to see on Disney Plus next week. I put up my full video review and written review on the website already, but because of that, I've essentially been spoiled into I know now what happened in history, because I didn't know. And I'm straight up, I didn't know anything about this stuff before we watched it. So therefore, the show kind of really helped kind of set that up for me. So I now know I know what happens. So therefore, it took a little bit the edge off the series. But then it made me like, oh, now I know what's actually happening. And I think that's definitely a good thing moving forward of how it does that. I thought the scene on the roof kind of that thing of like Glenn was completely, he obviously was just reacting, and I kind of felt a bit bad for Glenn at that point, because it's like he doesn't know what Alan thinks something's going on here, and he hasn't actually done anything different.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of projection from Alan's character, or from Alan in that case, where he's just like, this is how I would react. I would be, gunning for this spot. If I didn't have it, I would be playing all of these dirty tricks. I would be doing everything I could to undermine him. And he's kind of going, well, then Glenn must be doing the same. And Glenn's kind of like, well, yeah, I want the position, and I've certainly done some things that I wouldn't normally have done, but I'm not going to push you off a roof. I'm not going to, go absolutely nuts. Plus, we'd already had that scene with Carpenter where he's like, all right, you know what? Let's just buckle down and do our job, do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, and the whole relationship between two even got brought up in the documentary about how, the whole thing of him standing up there and kind of telling everyone that, and it got everyone's back up, and the fact that Carpenter and Glenn were a kind of one group and all the other guys were in the other group. So I thought that worked, because it was almost like, Carpenter had barely been kind of showcased in this at all. And obviously he was really important because as well. And I just like that whole thing. And in some ways it was much more about Alan this episode. Glenn kind of had been, he's knows his place, and you can see he's put out because he's not number one and he's having to play along with the game. But yeah, he genuinely in that scene he was just trying to do his bit. He was playing good guy and just trying to, whereas Alan was, in some ways a little bit, well, I mean, I'm not surprised, he might be, the fact of him even having to kind of authorize the eulogy, I think it was all that thing of, if he's going to go, he just flies by this, he doesn't waste time. He doesn't wait about and think about things. He just reacts.
Which is very common in test pilots, which is, of course, what all of them were. And it makes sense. That's what you hired. You'd hired test pilots. They're very get up and go. There's a job that needs doing, so let's do the job. And and it really does show in this episode. It'll show more next episode as well. But now I have not seen the Real Right Stuff. Obviously, I don't get the early access, but I already know the story.
Yeah.
So knowing the story now, though, I think you can also understand some of the comments I've made previously, where I'm like, there are so many interesting stories that happen after this first launch, and we won't get to see them, and I'm really, really frustrated by that. But I'm still enjoying it in the moment. I'm really excited for next episode. I don't know if they're going to show like the entire first flight because it's only 15-minute long. The flight itself is only 15 minutes long. Or they're going to cut it up. Or are they going to do a fast forward and kind of show what happens with everyone else, or what's going on? I'm kind of looking forward to that. Plus, watching the actual documentary should be.
The good thing I like with the documentary, and this will be so, I've mentioned this on so many of the documentaries. There's not really like an audio commentary.
Yes.
What they tend to do is they've got so much footage from the real event that they can actually put their own interviews and own things in it. So therefore, they'll just flash up on the screen like a text thing, kind of giving you an idea of what the montage is going to be. But because they're using the real stuff, there's no there's just no and I kind of really enjoyed that because it's like it didn't need it. The way that they were presented it didn't need it because the interviews were flowing from one to another, and then a little bit of text saying this happened next, this happened next, this happened, that kind of thing. And it was so refreshing not having, because some of the National Geographic audio thing, it feels like they're talking. This one wasn't, and it was so refreshing not to have that whole hi, now he's gonna go. It's like, yeah, we don't need that. This peppy, stuff. It was like, no, it was proper serious.
And here's Shepard entering the capsule for the first time, where he'll discover a card left by John Glenn that's supposed to be a joke, but he thinks it's not funny at all. Like, what's going to go on there? I would highly recommend, if you liked this documentary, and this is for everyone else as well, check out the Apollo 11 documentary. It's not Disney, but it's from I want to say it was last year, because last year was the anniversary of the
I think it was
moon
made by
landing.
the same team, actually.
Yeah, and it is fantastic. It's in the same style, very, very little commentary, all authentic footage from the time, with a couple of narration bits to be like, this is what's happening, and written narration, and a couple of diagrams where they're like, all right, this is the trajectory they're going to do to go around the moon and things like that. Absolutely fantastic. It's about an hour long. Sadly, not Disney, but worth tracking down if you find that you like the real right stuff next week. If you enjoy it, track that one down.
I guess, and kind of combining all together, I think was great. I think it's a smart idea to drop it. In some ways, dropping it next week is a great idea for them to do it that way, and I think that's definitely a good thing of how they've done it. But just really enjoyed the series. It's like next week's the last episode. I'm like, it's like, is this the kind of thing? Are you sure you could have done 22 episodes? I kind of quite like this.
I know. I am desperately hoping for a second season, even if they pick up the second season where they're like, okay, Mercury program is done. We are moving on to Project Gemini. Here's Neil Armstrong and all these guys going up in the dual flights. I would really love them to do that. But from the very beginning, I want to see all the flights. I want to see Gordon Cooper's flight, because that flight is absolutely bonkers.
Which one was the one that he got carried away with the camera? And was that Cooper?
I think one of them got carried away, actually.
So one of them got carried away with taking too many pictures and ended up like using up all the fuel and like overshot.
Oh no, that was Carpenter. Mission Control was furious at Carpenter in his flight because he wasn't listening to him. He was doing his own thing, and he completely messed up. He never flew again. Actually, he never went into space again. But as I said, and I won't spoil it because I don't know if they'll talk about it in the real right stuff. But Cooper's flight is one of the most amazing flights. It's up there on like Apollo 13 levels of just like pure technical skill getting you through absolute craziness. And I am very sad we won't get to see that flight.
Yeah. The thing they did set up was the women's group.
Right.
Setting up that quite well. And I was a little bit like, it's like with Gordo, where, he's obviously, he brought it up at the bar about him defending them, right? Defending what they were doing. And he got torn to bits, right? And of course, then he's on the stage and he's in front of all these blokes. And then the trouble is as well, we're projecting like today onto then. And obviously at the time, it was a very different era. And his comments, they to us now, they sound, like you're awful. You're horrible, and but it's like that kind of thing. Yeah, but you could see the conflict that they played on him, and which I thought was good. And it was that kind of thing of like, and obviously his daughters and his wife being so upset, and it was like, oh, because they set up the whole thing with her being on in the test thing, and it's a bit like, oh, they're so setting this, they're setting the tone, because I think they had said that they were wanting to do the second season looking at them doing this, but I was a bit like, oh, they're definitely setting the tone for the next season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they play that out, because the Mercury 13 program, which is the women's program, didn't make it to Project Gemini. It got closed before we got to the Gemini program, and so if the timelines that they're going the shows on means we wouldn't see it unless they alter the timeline, which we've seen they've done before. Yeah. It's interesting though that they made Gordo the bad guy on that one. Not saying it didn't happen. I don't actually know if that one happened, but in real life, the bad guy of that story is actually John Glenn.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me actually, because it's very well. He's just an old-fashioned,
right?
And you got to imagine this is old-fashioned based on like the 20s and the 30s kind of territory,
right? I say the bad guy because it's from our modern perspective. In the 1960s, obviously, I think most men agreed with him, but he got in front of Congress and he said, you know what, women aren't suitable to fly in space. He based it on the idea that these women never had jet fighter experience, which of course they did not, ignoring the fact that they did not have jet fighter experience because they were not allowed to have jet fighter experience being women. Didn't age well, but it was a different time.
And this is the thing, is it was so far ago that so much has changed. And that's the thing of sometimes with these shows, they're projecting stuff that at the time was just general. And but obviously that's just how time goes. Moving on from there, we also had the newest episode of The Mandalorian. What did you think of that one?
It's right now competing with the first episode of this season as my favorite of this season so far. I really love this episode, and I will grant you that part of that is seeing Bo-Katan come to life from the animated show. There were just some great scenes with her and her what do you want to call them? Guards, compatriots, I don't know.
Yeah. Sasha Banks, the boss.
WWE reference. I only know that because I read the press release that says she's in the WWE. But yeah,
well, the thing is like with that is from my point of view, it's like they teased who she was, and of course everyone was getting like, it's Ahsoka Tano. It's like, no, it's a different person completely. And of course
that one was like Ahsoka is orange, people.
Yeah. I really like that, and the whole episode is just full of action. And what I loved as well was seeing the Mandalorians fighting the stormtroopers.
Oh, that was great.
That was suddenly like, that kind of thing of like, oh, I am watching Star Wars. That because sometimes you kind of, you're getting the hint. I wouldn't say I forget that it's Star Wars, because it's like you get caught up in it and you're watching it and it's all new characters and it's new planets. But this was like, when they're actually going up against the Empire, that's when it feels like proper Star Wars. And you got stormtroopers running around and all the way. Because when he's off on some random planet fighting monsters, big spiders, it wasn't until the X-Wings turn up that you suddenly, oh yeah, we're an X-Wing, But I thought this was a great episode, really enjoyed it. It's funny because I'm seeing like some people like complaining about like, all these filler episodes and the story not moving and it's too slow. I'm like, what? All these, and it's like, I really enjoy that aspect to it. I like these individual stories. It's a TV show. It's not a movie. They're not making a movie here.
Yeah, and I would accept that criticism in season 1. I mean, I think we even leveled that criticism ourselves back in like the second episode when we're like, wait, hold on, the story got put on hold so we could go off and do something else for a little while. What's going on? But now we're almost halfway through the second season. You know what this show is about at this point. It is a monster of the week with the occasional dip into the continuing story. I mean, you are allowed to be upset about it. Obviously, you want the overarching story, but you do kind of have to accept that this is what they're doing with it.
Yeah. And I think this is my feet. It's one of those things of, I think a lot of people are looking at like the Clone Wars of all the, like, it's like the Clone Wars took, years to get anything done. It took them. They had so much filler, and it's like, yeah. I don't know. I just really enjoyed this episode. I mean, it was the shortest one of the lot, but it made sense. A couple of other quick nods I noticed as well. Don't know if you did, but because Bryce Howard, she directed it, but also there's the scene where the Razor Crest is dropping. It's literally a homage to Apollo 13, which her father made, like literally almost like shot for shot, but just reversed.
Yes.
And even she went on Twitter and was like, "Oh yeah, you caught it, people." And I thought that was good.
I watched that scene. I'm like, I've seen this somewhere before. My initial reaction was actually Firefly. I'm like, this is from Firefly, but I was like, no, this doesn't actually line up with anything from Firefly. And I think I saw it on Reddit or something like that, where someone showed the shots side by side. I was like, yep, okay, that is Apollo 13 right there.
Yeah, which I thought was good. I really enjoyed that aspect. Again, it's full of action, and I really like that whole aspect to it of them just kind of. Puppy's decided to start biting my feet. She's been
now your hands.
She's being a pain today. Normally she sleeps through the episodes, but today, even though I got up with her early,
normally she's only been in like 3 episodes, and she's definitely been attacking you in all of them.
Yeah, but for this one, she's biting me here now. Yeah, I just found like with and now she's eating the cheek. I found like the whole aspect of the Mandalorians and then rescuing the whole kind of reminding me of the Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. Yes. I mean, but I remember having one of those action figures as a kid, one of the squid guys, and it was like, they wouldn't, they were in a scene in Return of the Jedi, and like that, they were like, this makes so much, and I like the fact that on the planet that you were using the water-based thing rather than just everybody. I really thought that was a smart move.
There was a lot of good world building going on in this episode that kind of extended our understanding of the Mon Calamari, which was the Admiral Akbar race, and then the squid guys called the Quarrens. And yeah, I just really loved that about the episode. I loved seeing, well, once again, the Mandalorian falling into an obvious trap. He needs to work on that a bit.
Yeah, it's the thing. He doesn't have a tendency to believe everyone at face value. It's like, I need someone to take me there. Well, this person knows it. I've known him for 10 minutes. Okay, I don't know. It's it's like, hey, here's the child. We're just going to give it to. Well, I suppose he knew.
I think the child was more dangerous to them than they were to the child, to be honest.
But there was something about the fact of him looking at the once the fish had become a person or had been. Obviously, it had become the little newt thing. He changed what he was doing, and of course there was some reference to the fact of are Baby Yodas made that way? Are they water things? Don't know. But the minute it became a little newt thing, he changed how he was looking at it.
I didn't actually kind of see that. I kind of felt like if he'd had the opportunity, he still would have eaten it. But I don't know. It's open to interpretation. There was nothing explicitly said. And I think the Mandalorian also kind of had that impression too. He's like, I know you're hungry. Let's go get some food. So.
Yeah, it is. That's the thing. Every time you turn around, he's eating something. It's like someone's about to kill him, and it's like next thing you know, he's eating it. Yeah, again, just more of this. It's just I really enjoyed the episode. It was refreshing, exactly well, and I can't put that enough. It's just like I want a little bit of Star Wars action every week. That's all we need. That's all we
It's a really good episode. It was great to see the Mandalorians. It was great to see Clone Wars Mandalorians interacting with Mando Mandalorian, and us finally getting the whole like taking the helmet thing off. Where in the Clone Wars, there's like whatever, I'm just gonna take my helmet off, and he's
and it was this kind of thing of like going, because I remember when this whole thing of like he can't take his helmet off, and going, but in this show they took it off all the time.
Yeah,
they were always taking it off, and of course, and there's like they fixed that whole loophole. They're like, oh yeah, you're part of a cult that you don't do it, and you've all been stolen, and you're not actually Mandalorian. And it was like, oh, okay, that kind of mixed it all up. And I just really, and it was nice as well seeing the mix between obviously the heavy Mandalorians and the female ones in their suits and the whole of how it all worked in, because it was like, and again when they flew in to sort of save. I mean, when the child got eaten by the big thing in the tank, and you're like, okay. And then suddenly they all flew in. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
No, definitely was not expecting that.
And at first I'm going, it's Sabine, it's Sabine. It's like, no, she wasn't playing Sabine.
I know everyone was. I was hoping for Sabine as well. No, Sasha was not Sabine, unfortunately, and we knew Katie Sackhoff was not going to be Sabine because she already played Bo-Katan in both Clone Wars and Rebels.
I like the fact that that was able to happen. I really like the fact that they were able to do that. Of like, she actually could play the character she played, because obviously they can't all do that.
They can't all do that, but it was great to see Katie Sackhoff. I'm not exactly a huge Battlestar Galactica fan, but Katie was one of the standout stars of that show, and I'm glad to see that she's continuing to be a standout star here and there. And I'm sure we haven't seen the last of her. They practically could have put in bold letters, "We'll see these Mandalorians again at the end of the season." You know.
Yeah, and we'll see them again, and we'll also see them in their own spin-off show, because we're going to give every character a spin-off.
To be honest, we haven't even had rumors about that one. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. But to be honest, after this episode, I'd be like, yeah, I would totally watch a spinoff with Katie Sackhoff and what's her Sasha Grey?
Banks. I don't know
Banks.
what her real name is. Yeah, but
I saw it in an article, but either Sasha Banks and nameless Mandalorian who was on the other side. I would totally watch a show with them.
Yeah, no, really good episode. Really enjoyed it. Definitely. I mean, I just found this whole season to be, I think because you're going into it knowing what you're getting, I think that's the difference. I mean, I know they're trying to build up, you know, I mean, she's trying to look for the dark saber, which we know what she's doing, and it was building on it. And it was like, okay, so yeah, this, I think what everyone liked about this one is there was that story progression, but in actual fact, yeah, okay, so you need to go meet a Jedi, you're going to go meet Ahsoka. Because at first I was going, is she talking Obi-Wan? You know, it's like, well, he's not going to turn up in this one because he would have been long gone.
So, yeah, this is post Return of the Jedi.
Well, I think the trouble is when you're jumping around so much, you get a little bit like when you're, you know, sometimes it's like, and I'm like, no, Obi-Wan will be long gone. So, and then obviously she name drops Ahsoka, and I'm like, cool, you know, and it's like, because then you're thinking, well, actually, yeah, because Jedi's were allowed to be around then, so that was
right. But most of them had been killed off
yeah.
long before, because this was long after the Clone Wars. But I like how they worked that in. I mean, we've known for a while that Ahsoka was probably coming up in here, but it makes sense for her to be introduced by Bo-Katan because they knew each other both in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. And yeah, so who would Bo-Katan point to? Everyone else is dead.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, well, I mean now we're next week is the halfway point. If they're going to introduce Ahsoka, that would seem like, and if she's in a lot of, because it's like, again, you know, we've not seen the other characters from the first season yet. You know, but heavily promoted them and all the talk. It's like, yeah, but we've not even seen them in the season. You know, whether or not he brings them, he's got to bring them back at some point. But there's got to be some big fight coming up for him to get the gang back together.
Right. I would caution that we should not necessarily expect that Ahsoka will show up in the next episode.
No.
Or any, Cara Dune or any of them. Because as we were just talking about, this show loves to take detours. It loves to be like, all right, we need to get over there. But first, I'm going to go
mission
here.
quest.
First, we're going to go after some spiders. And the Razor Crest is still in absolutely abysmal condition. So we will see. Obviously, I hope that we get Ahsoka sooner rather than later, and we get the gang back together sooner rather than later. But just everyone, keep your expectations.
Yeah, when you're saying that, yeah, they could still do. I mean, they could do a whole thing of just going and getting fuel for the ship. You know, it's. I did love the fact that they turned the Razor Crest ended up becoming like a pirate ship. You know,
that
was
like why
is it was like you got in and they're like, what the? What? This is like webbing and netting all over everything. It was like, what?
I kind of that was fun, and then I also just loved the entire landing sequence. Or like, you need to slow down. He's like, I'm trying. I am definitely trying. And then just when you think he's got it, oops. No, he didn't. He didn't.
I mean, how that shit goes on. I mean, it's a full-on banger.
This is like that old logic puzzle. Once you replace all the panels on the ship, is it still the same ship anymore? Because everything's got to have been replaced by now.
But I'm really enjoying that they are really using that ship much more. It's become, I mean, yeah, it was in the, but it's becoming much more of a bigger thing. And I mean, how many times he's destroyed it in the last few weeks?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure that the Razor Crest is going to survive this season. I would not be incredibly surprised if season 3 he had a new ship, because this one is getting torn to pieces.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting how it all goes on. But there we go. That goes the Mandalorian. So we obviously have another episode next week, and we'll also be talking on next week's show. I'll be talking about Marvel 616, and also we'll be talking about the Mickey Mouse new animated series, the Lego Star Wars special. Got a lot of fun stuff to talk about next week. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you do go subscribe either on YouTube or on audio platforms. Go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe, and we shall see you guys in another episode. Later.